Hello, geometry students, and welcome to Monday, January the 11th. You got an extra week off, and I hope that you enjoyed that, but now we are back and we're starting up on Chapter 5. I don't really think we've lost much momentum, and I believe that we will catch up at some point during the rest of the quarter, so don't be concerned that you're not going to get everything you need, because I'm sure we'll be just fine. Now, we are moving ahead into dealing more with triangles. We'll be dealing with different shapes as we go through the rest of the book, but it's really important that you know how to deal with triangles, rectangles, squares, circles, because you will be using those a lot. We don't just deal with straight lines as we did in algebra. And as you get into Algebra 2 next year, you'll see some of the different shapes that you'll be dealing with. So it's important to know all of the different aspects of triangles, and that's what we'll be looking at in Lesson 5.1. I am probably going to pick up and do more of the lessons just so that I challenge myself as opposed to pulling the guy in that I've been using for a lot of the lessons up until this point. Since the material probably starts to get a little harder, I will probably be doing the lessons just to make sure that I am tracking with you guys and know what I've told you, and then I'm relearning it all with you. So expect to hear my voice unless for some reason I can't do it, but I will be planning to do the videos, most of them from here on out. So let's get started. We are looking at congruence and triangles. If you do not already have your book out, turn to page 233. And this lesson is actually fairly simple. And there will be some new rules that I'll be pointing out. I'm not sure if in this lesson or in the next one. I just know that I'll be pointing them out. And what I want you to do is look at the bottom of page 233. And I'm going to review with you what congruence means. Hopefully that's been the biggest word that we've learned all year long. Congruence means that either sides or angles are similar or are the same, not similar, the same. So the length of a side and the length of a side of another triangle would equal each other. So let's just look at the definition here. We have figures are congruent if all pairs of corresponding angles are congruent and corresponding sides are congruent. Now if we look at the example here, and it's also in your book right in the middle of page 233, but if you look at these triangles in red, you can see that they look pretty similar, and the book is telling us that they are congruent. They're the same size and shape, and if we were to measure them, we would discover that they are all the same. Now, we can pretty easily look at the blue triangles and see that they're actually different sizes and different shapes. That's going to clue us in that they're not congruent. So that's just the first thing, is to make sure that you understand all the parts of triangles and that you know you're looking for sides and angles that are the same. Now, if you look down at the bottom of that page, example number 1, I've included it in the PowerPoint. Here's where I want to point out a first very important rule, because from now on the way that you name your triangles is going to be important. You can't just haphazardly pick the 3 letters and put them in any random order. Like, I cannot say that triangle JLK is congruent to triangle TSR. Now, hopefully, y'all are sitting there asking, well, why? They're the same triangle. It is extremely important to name them so that we have named them as mirror images. Here's what I'm talking about. Let's say I'm going to call this first triangle right here, this one, JKL. I've started here at the little teeny tiny angle. I go over to the right angle and then up. JKL. That's his name. I also have to name this one in the same manner, starting with the little teeny tiny angle and then moving to the right angle and up. So JKL is a mirror image, congruent, whatever you want to call it, to RST. So it is really important that as you name your triangles, if you're going to tell me two triangles are congruent, you've got to name them as mirror images. So be really, really careful with that, and I'll try to point that out in class. Notice here that they say JKL, RST. They have done that correctly. Now, if we look at the rest of this, some of the other things that we can learn from this triangle is that corresponding angles, that's what we're looking at first. J is going to be congruent to R, K to S, and we actually give us that information. We know those are right angles. And then L is congruent to T. The corresponding sides, again, should be fairly simple. JK is congruent to RS, and again, I start with the little teeny tiny JK, little teeny tiny RS, so they are named as mirror images. And then we know that KL is congruent to ST. Now, if I said KL is congruent to TS, I would be wrong. I would get a point off on a test. Be careful. And then finally, JL is congruent to RT. So it's extremely important how you name those sides and those angles. Now let's move on to the next page. So you can turn to page 234. And what they have up here is actually a precursor to what we're going to be doing in the next chapter. Write a congruence statement. This is we're going to actually get in the next lesson, writing our theorems, our postulates, and proofs. So this is kind of just a little tease because we're going to get some more formal proof writing. So what they want you to be able to do, it says the two triangles are congruent. All given information is underneath, it's in the diagram. And they want us to identify all the corresponding parts and the congruent parts. And then you can write a congruent statement. I don't really have you do those on tests, but you can just write a statement to the degree of, we'll do it in just a second. So first of all, you would have a list here. Angle A is congruent to angle F. Again, we are looking to match. So if you've ever played that game, Match, when you were a little kid, and maybe it was Bugs, or it's called Memory, that's what it is. You have to find the two matching cards. It's the same thing here. You've got to find the two matching angles. So here's B and D, and then finally C and E. And then your corresponding sides, AB is with FD. Don't tell me AB is with DF, because then you would have gotten it backwards. Then BC is corresponding to DE, and finally AC to FE. Now, I wouldn't want you to do any more than that. Of course, here you can show that your two triangles are congruent, but I wouldn't worry about writing any other kind of statement. Okay, let's move on and talk about how we can use these properties. Now, you will obviously be given sometimes information. Here we have that PR equals 10. We have that angle Y equals 95. And here they've told us that these triangles are indeed congruent. Now, my little wonky picture doesn't necessarily represent them very well, but they are congruent. So you can actually pull a lot of information from that. You now know that ZRP is 10 and ZX is going to be 10. Angle Y is 95. Therefore, once we figure out the memory angle over here, then we know that that angle is 95. So now we know that Q is 95. So there's lots of things that we can find out by the information they give us in the triangles. So we know that PR is 10, ZX is 10, or excuse me, XZ, and we know that those angles will also match in value. So always look for everything you can find out based on the information that they give you. Now, I would like for you to look for a few minutes at your checkpoints. And I would like for you to do number 1 and 2. Hit pause on the video for a second and do 1 and 2, and then I will give you the answers. Okay, if you are back, number 1 tells us that STU is congruent to YXZ. Now, one of the things that I will encourage people to do is to actually sit the triangles so that they look like they're congruent and that they match. So since YXZ is, in my opinion, laying down on the job, I would actually draw it, sit it up, so that the two triangles are sitting the same next to each other. And then I can probably answer all the questions pretty easily. So I am going to assume that UT, if I set it up correctly, UT would equal ZX. Then US would equal ZY. And then finally, ST would equal YX. So again, it really helps to sit it up so that you can see it a little bit easier. All right, then the next one says, given that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF, find the length of DF and the measure of angle B. Well, again, they look like maybe they're congruent. I would sit them up so that they sit mirror side by side. But once I do that, then I'll be able to figure out that DF is the same as AC and equals 3, and that angle B is the same as angle E and equals 28 degrees. So there's lots that you can find out about your triangles when you are using the congruence information that they give you. So I want you to do the homework for this section today. Tomorrow there will be another video and homework for that. Trying that out a little bit this week as well. And then Wednesday we will actually be playing the unfair game. We haven't done that in a while, and we will be using our theorems, postulates, definitions. Remember those flashcards on those index cards that you've been using? And some of you have been using online ones. That's totally fine. But you need to brush up on them, because we're going to play the unfair game on Wednesday when I see you to see how well you remember some of these things. So anyway, I will see you for tomorrow's video, and I will see you on Wednesday.